All right. Good morning, everyone. Or maybe it's just the afternoon if you're on the East Coast, right? Just afternoon. Well, thank you so much for participating in another ADA Q&A. Always a pleasure to work with a wonderful group of transit professionals. And so you're on here because you enjoy my messaging. My style is really not throwing regulations at you. By the way, Jess Segovia, ADA guru. I specialize in all of the ADA operating requirements. And so, yeah, you're here because you like my philosophy, right? We do the best we can. We have choices. Let's make choices that hopefully meet the needs of our riders, right? Are obviously compliant with the ADA, are reasonable, help us achieve service delivery within budget. We are always considering the future. So there are lots of ways we can provide accommodations. Are those in our best interest long term? So maybe we can provide some short term. And then as our services grow, right, I really try to help you all understand that the choices and decisions we make today, especially in things like paratransit eligibility, will affect us in the future. And another thing that I strongly believe that I see coming true time and time again is at some point, whether in 5 months, in 5 years, at some point down the road, every agency will be at or over budget, at or over capacity in your paratransit services. And you're going to be thinking about some of the policy decisions you made years before, right? Some decisions we make, especially in paratransit, can absolutely increase demand for our service. And so when our service is smaller, and we're in a growing community, it's easy to manage growth, right? And then things explode, populations explode, retirement, right? The baby boomers. And now all of a sudden we have more riders than we have budget for, than we have vehicles for. And there are lots of variables that contribute to that. However, the ones that we are able to control are our policies and the ways that we provide services and complete paratransit eligibility. So I like to do these Q&As just to check in with you all and answer your questions. There's already been some great questions posted. Most of you know that I created this concept, what I call the 5 pillars of ADA compliance, right? How do we comply with the ADA? What do I do? Where do I begin? So I identified the structure as I've shared with you in the past, right? Pillar number one, the built environment. We need to have accessible vehicles. We need to maintain them properly, have policies that support when we have equipment breakdowns, pre and post trip inspection, all of these good things, right? Policies and procedures, let's be honest. We need to have some policies and procedures to help guide the way services are delivered. Policies tell drivers, you do these things, you will be safe, the riders will be safe, and we will be meeting the needs of our riders and delivering the services that we have planned to deliver.
I thought you had because
Pillar number three, training staff to proficiency. We need to train staff to be experts in their job. And so that means the content of our training, process, hands-on elements of our training. All of these things are very, very important. And so we don't want to lose track of the importance of not just training, of course, but pillar number four, compliance oversight. Once drivers have been trained, we turn them over into the world of service delivery. And now they are assisting riders and controlling really large vehicles and steering wheelchairs and doing all of the things that we have trained them to do. We need to have a solid, consistent compliance oversight program to make sure that our employees, especially drivers, are doing what they need to be doing. And that does include more than just road supervisors responding to um, incidents and accidents, right? That's where when you're a fire, yeah, you go put out the fire. But what about where there's the smoke? How do we identify where there is smoke within our ADA program? And then we move to put that out and make some adjustments, whatever that might be, retrain, so that we don't end up with a fire with a rider getting injured or worse. And then lastly, a really, really important piece to all of this is rider education. All of the ways that we share information about our services. That can be website content, a rider's guide, typically what we see in ADA paratransit, the eligibility process. The list goes on and on and on. All of our efforts to create a realistic expectation of our service. And let's be quite frankly, and then I'll roll into questions. Let's be frank about rider education. We can't control whether riders look at our information and learn about how to make a reservation and all of these things. There is nothing we can do to force people to look at our material. However, if we remember that ADA compliance, 95% of the time or more, is proven on paper, in reports, in website content, in rider's guide content. I did a rider's guide for an agency in Northern California last year and received feedback from them that they just completed their triennial review, and the ADA, the FTA's consultants that completed the triennial review loved the document, loved the policies that we created together, and it really helped streamline, I think, their experience, at least the ADA portion of their triennial review. So this is what we try to do, right? Create great documents. We can't control, you know what they didn't ask? The FTA's consultants during the triennial review, how many people read your rider's guide? They don't ask that. They just look, share the information that you have available. And we have met the requirement for those things. So hope that's helpful. Little information there, part of my intro. When I review an agency, they call me in and I review your ADA compliance program. And by the way, do you call it an ADA compliance program? It should be a formal program. If we don't formalize it, it is so easy to take our attention off of very, very important things. So it doesn't mean that ADA is always the most important thing on your to-do list every day, but we need to make sure that it stays a priority, right? So that we don't end up with issues. All right, so thank you all so much. Here is a question. Crystal, thank you so much. The question is, whose responsibility is it to strap a person into a wheelchair for transport? Great question. So what I'm going to say is that if we agree that pillar number 3, we need to train staff to be experts in assisting people with disabilities and in using the equipment and the vehicles we have. And so when it comes to wheelchair securement, who is the only person that has received training on using wheelchair securement equipment? And the answer is our driver. You know, I always go van driver, bus operator. That's sort of the way I grew up in our industry with those terms. So it is the bus operator or van driver that, from my perspective, is responsible for wheelchair securement. Okay, they are the only ones trained on that equipment. And we don't want someone, I've seen video of someone breaking their finger while securing a wheelchair, not using the equipment properly. So my feedback to you would be from a liability perspective, definitely, we would not want to allow a personal care attendant who has not been through comprehensive wheelchair securement training the way our drivers have. We would not want them to secure a wheelchair. So could I find guidance on this in the ADA? No, but we have to use our common sense. Now, this is a choice, by the way. I'm providing my opinions, and my ADA tips. I say my thoughts are, because I don't really like to tell agencies what to do. But the truth is you have an option. What I said, the person that's trained, the driver should do it, period. It should be in your policies. That is my guidance to help you reduce liability and not have other people on the bus getting injured by this equipment, okay? You have a choice, however. You could allow PCAs to do this, and then we just hope that nothing happens. Probably nothing will happen, but that's the issue with, or the challenge with liability, right? Most of the time, nothing happens, but when it does, wow, are we really challenged with dealing with an issue? So I hope that guidance, my opinion, is helpful to you there, Crystal. Next question. How can we determine that someone is able to use fixed route buses if they've never attempted to use the bus? The applicant, so now we're talking about paratransit eligibility. This is from Luisa up at Monterey Salinas Transit. Hi, Luisa. The applicant did okay in the assessment, but I think the assessment is easier than taking the real bus. Touch on several really important issues here, Luisa. First issue that pops up to my mind is, well, let's talk about, and I'm working on several projects right now where I'm reviewing an agency's eligibility application and recommending changes and enhancements to it for the very issue that you address here. I am not a fan of really asking questions about, are you able to ride the bus? Because that assumes that people know what it takes to ride the bus. And then when someone has never ridden the bus, that's pretty much these questions are useless, right? So what do I like to do? And we get this information from what is it, the FACT eligibility testing process. We and I like to ask questions specific to what it takes to ride the bus. So we can figure out what it takes to walk to the bus stop, to wait at the bus stop, to recognize that my bus is pulling up, um, to get on the bus and pay my fare, right? To sit safely on the bus. I might need to stand on the bus if it's full. The list goes on and on. I am a fan of creating an application full of questions like this that ask about their abilities to do some of these things. The other thing that I like to do is to ask questions in my interview about like their day to day. Oh, when was the last time you went to the grocery store? Okay, last week. Wonderful. Did you go alone or did you go with someone? Oh, your daughter took you, and did she drive in her car? She did. Okay. Did you have any challenges walking from the car to the grocery store? Did you have any challenges? How long were you walking? How long do you think you were shopping for? Did you ever get tired? Did you need a rest? Do you see that I'm asking questions about their day to day and that these things are kind of reflective of the processes of using the bus as well? So that's how I like to go about the eligibility process, okay? Back to your question, they've never ridden the bus. How do I evaluate? The last thing I'll say on this, of course, I could talk for 2 hours, 6 hours about eligibility, and I have an eligibility training coming up on May 28th as well, by the way. The other thing I'll share is that there are agencies out there and I think they do this in Stockton, at least they used to. Their eligibility office was at the transit center, and so they'll take them on the bus. And there are videos online where you can see people being evaluated using the FACT evaluation approach, where they're taking people on the bus and they are evaluating. So that is a choice, how we complete eligibility. So Luisa, I wonder if it's possible to consider for at least some people adding a transit walk and a transit trip, right? So lots of ways to complete eligibility and so a lot of times we think, oh no, there aren't a lot of ways. We either do paper only with a medical verification or we do in person, but there are many ways to do in person, right? And then the interview. And in person could be at our facility. In person could be at a senior center. I work with an agency where, when needed, they will do an in-person assessment and they will meet at a senior center, right? Or you can go to their home and evaluate them in their community. So yes, each one of these things takes a different level of effort. And if you're hiring a contractor, might be different costs, right? But we have lots of choices and lots of options. And if I can, I would love to assist any of you in your agencies in helping perhaps recreate, reimagine what an eligibility process can be in your community. And I'm actually going to be, this is maybe the first time I'm announcing, but I am going to moving into the world of eligibility a little bit. So more to share on that later. So I hope that's helpful, Louisa. Next question here from Dan. My drivers always ask what we can do with passengers that have overwhelming odor and soiling of their pants. Oh, yes. one of our favorite topics, right? Well, what can we do? Well, let's refer to the direct threat denial of service guidance in the ADA, which says that we are able to deny services if someone is seriously disruptive, okay? And we have to define what seriously disruptive means, and we can say, well, anything uh, that is objectively creating an unsafe situation. And so in the area of odor, okay, here's what when a driver tells me this, oh, I picked up this rider the other day and they smelled so bad and I had to open the windows. Do I have to transport them? And I said, I feel like you already answered your question. They open the windows. I asked, so you were safely able to provide service? Well, yeah, I was, but I really didn't like it. I didn't like the odor. And well, I feel like you've answered it already. Yes, you open the window and therefore you solve the issue. So there is no safety issue. So we have to be really careful with odor. Okay, has to be objective. Is the odor bad enough that it is affecting the driver's ability to operate the vehicle? If a driver physically gets sick and throws up, we've met the standard. If a driver just has to open a window and now everything's fine, now, of course, it's not fine, but they're able to safely do their job, then we really don't have an issue to address here. Okay, so that's the odor part. Soiling is different. If if someone is standing in a puddle of urine outside your vehicle, we do not need to let them on board. You can, and I have agencies that tell me all the time, our routes are like 3 hours apart, and if we don't pick people up, they're going to be stuck there for hours and hours and hours. Or they'll say the rider was actually wanting to be transported to where they could get cleaned. So it's a choice. But most agencies will not provide assistance to a person who has soiled themselves. That's different than smelling like urine. That's different than smelling like feces. If we see it on their wheelchair, if we see it on their pants, we can't objectively determine they are going to transfer it to our vehicle. So, Dan, these are very high standards that we need to meet, okay? I think it's a no-brainer, perhaps. I see the urine, I see the feces, I draw a line. Absolutely. Those are easier. Odor, it's just because something is annoying does not make it unsafe. So I hope that guidance is helpful to you. And thank you so much for the question. And good morning, Bree. I wish I could see you on here, but thanks for being on here. Always great to have you on. Let's see. Louisa followed up. Our assessment is in person in our facility. I've been there, one of the more beautiful ones in the country that I visited. I experienced someone who did not want to come to the facility because they're 83 years old and can't be outside of their house for more than 2 hours. We offered a 90-day trial for our service. Would there be a different solution for this? No, Louisa, this is a choice. I was very generous of Monterey Salinas Transit to offer that. What we could have also determined, this is a choice again, we could have determined that they were not following the process. And if we do have a process where everyone is required to come in for an in-person assessment and they refused to, then we could have said, please contact us again when you are ready. So that was a very kind thing to do, to give them use of the service. Is it possible? Is it realistic? They can literally only be out of the home for 2 hours at a time. I guess that is. So I would just monitor that. Now you have a choice. What do we do after 90 days, right? Do we extend the 90 days? Do we just assess them with the information they provide in the application and with medical verification? Or do we take a harder stand and say, we gave you 90 days, now it is time for you to complete our process? So that will be a choice and decision that you all get to make. All right. All right. Thank you so much for that follow-up question. Here's one from Cynthia. Gold Coast Transit up in Ventura County. A new scenario for us. One of our ADA riders using access service, so Paratransit, just had a baby, and the baby is a month old and needs to use the service. So the mother is the person with the disability or the baby? She asked if a car seat is required, and we said yes. But who is responsible for installing and removing the car seat? For now, we told her that she is responsible for installation, and I could not find much. Yeah, you're not going to find much on this one. If she cannot install it alone, can we require her to ride with the PCA? So great question. You're right. Um, there's no real guidance on this per se. I see policies on both sides where, as an accommodation, the rider will be allowed to secure the car seat. And it does make sense to me that on any vehicle other than a large traditional bus, that car seats would be required, especially if that is state law in your state. The other thing is, the other thing is there is liability. And this is why agencies might have a policy that does not allow drivers to attach car seats. Because if they do it incorrectly, and quite frankly, some of them are really difficult. It took me a while to figure out how to secure a couple of my son's car seats. So what did I do? I just bought one for every car we had and one backup and tried not to take them out and put them in if I could help it. And so there's a choice here, right? I frankly, if we're talking about the greatest level of liability, I like a policy that says that the rider must attach their own child car seat, etc., so that the driver doesn't have liability and responsibility. However, it is also a nice level of service and can be provided as an accommodation, right? To allow drivers to attach them if you are comfortable with that. And if your drivers are comfortable with that, I would suggest we probably, if we do have a policy that allows drivers to do this, then we should have one type of car seat of every type that might be out there so that they are trained on it. And so we don't have any issues. So I hope that's helpful to you. It's a choice. Ultimately, it's a choice. And I would not frown on either requiring the rider to do it or your policy that allows your driver to do it, whatever we are comfortable with. Um, requiring a PCA, uh, if indeed the rider could not safely secure the car seat and your policy does not allow your driver to, then we could identify that this is a safety issue that we need to remedy. And perhaps it can only be remedied by a car seat, or excuse me, by a PCA. So yeah, hope that's helpful to you. Another question here. This is from, why don't I just put these on the screen for you all? Uh, from Kim, I think, Kim Grimes. Does everyone send out a physical rider's guide with their destination, with their determination packet, or has anyone been successful with online access with requests from customers if it is a physical copy needed? It's all over the place. I quite frankly like a process where when a person becomes eligible in their packet, we send them a hard copy of the rider's guide. Why? I am also an expert in lawsuits. Every lawsuit that I've been a part of has been regarding a rider with a disability being injured, and the lawsuit was the rider, the family suing the transit agency. In that situation, we need to have as much proof that we have gone above and beyond sometimes to ensure that riders have the services they need safely and the information that they need. So I love on paper if I were to come across an agency that sends out the rider's guide to everyone, a hard copy, as well as provides guidance in the information, that this is available, an accessible version is available as well online. So there are multiple sources. So no, I don't know that it is a requirement to send it out, but on paper, to prove that we have done everything in our power to help educate our riders so they can use our services safely, etc. I really like that practice. So I hope that's helpful to you. Did anyone respond to that? No, we do not have a policy on car seats. So, that's another thing to talk about, right? I talk about policies. Sometimes we come across issues where we want to enforce a policy and then we realize, oh my gosh, we don't have one. That's why agencies reach out to me, some, to help update. Let's review your policies. Let's update them. Let's address everything we might need to in there Now we have a nice, fresh set of policies, and it's sort of like a new beginning, right? Creating a new culture of accessibility within your agency. So please do reach out to me. You can email me info@adaguru.co, and we will be good to go on that. Okay. So wonderful. Let's see here. Next question. Sorry, I'm referring to belts on the chair. For example, I've had people fall out of their wheelchair because they're not belted into their chair. Okay, so now let's go back to wheelchairs. And some wheelchairs have what we call a posture belt. It has different names. That belt is used to keep the person from sliding out of their wheelchair. So it helps keep them to some extent sitting upright. Okay. And so there is no requirement in the ADA that wheelchairs need to have them, and there is no requirement in the ADA that people need to use them. We can have a policy. I think it would be reasonable that we have a policy that we recommend it. We can recommend it, right? Just like all we can do is recommend that someone power their wheelchair off or set their brakes. We can't demand, require these things. All we can do is recommend. So we should not have a policy. My opinion is that we try to have a policy that says if your wheelchair does not have a posture belt, whatever you want to call it, services will be denied. I don't think that is a compliant, fair policy. So I hope that helps there. Again, we can just recommend, but we can't require on the posture belt. Okay. Here's a comment from Rachel. We allow PCAs to strap down, but the drivers are required to confirm it is done correctly. That's a choice. Okay. Here we have a contractor doing fax assessments. If the person reaches a certain score, we do a real bus trip following to confirm fax results. Very good. That's why these tools are out there, right? Cynthia, are your drivers trained child passenger service technician? As a certified child passenger service technician, we let the parents know that they need to install the infant seat, have the driver check for security of the seat. So that's one way to go about it. No, our drivers are not trained. Yes, we are concerned about liability as a mother. Car seat installation, it was so difficult for sure. Yeah, very, very good. How do we handle hygiene body odor? Heather, I did touch on that one. I don't know if you maybe logged on a little late. But odors, if a driver can open if a driver can open the window and successfully provide service, even though there is odor, then there are no safety issues. But if a driver were to get sick and throw up, now we have moved into the area of direct threat, and we can consider denying services. Yeah, so let's see. Here's a question here from Ryan. This will be our last question. At our rural transit agency, we have faced staffing issues, and our dispatcher has been performing double duties as a driver. Very common. During these times, the phones are left unattended for short periods of time, and our clients must leave a message. If they need to get in contact with us, one of our clients have been very vocal about this, violating ADA compliance, and believe that we are liable if they cannot get a hold of a dispatcher while they are using our service. We hope to remedy this soon by hiring new staff. Do you have any insight into this situation? Well, great question. Riders are supposed to be able to reach someone when they are using service. Okay, so leaving a message, requiring them to leave a message, and then following up with them hours later, I don't think that that is a recipe for success. I don't think that that is responsive, right? We need to be responsive when we are providing transportation services. So my recommendation, Ryan, would be for you to hire staff as absolutely soon as possible. Here's the choice that you're making. Let's be honest here. The choice you're making is, do I not have the dispatcher doing their job and and ensuring the safe delivery of services, or do I provide more service? So I'm actually feeling, I'm not saying this is true, but in this moment, I am feeling like we have a choice of providing uh, fewer trips that are safer because we have a dispatcher available and we can help people that are having challenges and drivers, or are we providing more trips that are less safe because we do not have a dispatcher on there to help manage emergencies and other operational challenges? As a person that likes to lean on the side of reducing and managing liability, my choice would be, Ryan, to provide less service and have your dispatcher there to manage those trips safely. That would be my choice. That would be my guidance. Again, just my thoughts. We all get to make choices on these things, right? So, do drivers have to be paramedic certified? Roger, here's the last question. You're welcome, Ryan. And if you'd like to talk more about some of these things, feel free to reach out to me, email, or you can give me a call. All my information is on my website, adaguru.co. Roger, do riders have to be paramedic certified? Right now, what I'm seeing in the industry is two things. One, we are still sending drivers through, um, we are still sending drivers through CPR training, and then we ask them to help when there is an emergency. The other thing I'm seeing, increasingly seeing, is agencies deciding not to allow their drivers to assist in an emergency. And instead, the policy says when there is a medical emergency, pull over and call 911 and don't assist in any way. That's not easy for the drivers to do, but that is an option. So no, they do not have to be paramedic certified. If your policy is simply medical emergency, pull over, call 911. If you do allow a rider to if you do allow a driver to assist in a medical emergency, then we would, of course, want to train them to the greatest degree possible and maybe have information or medical supplies on board, things like that. So, great questions today, everyone. Very active. Thank you so much. Here, I'll just close out. Here's my website. You go to workshops, and here is all the information. Here is the ADA compliance training in Paradise in Hawaii. There is a training coming up for those of you in California, and even if you'd like to travel, coming up May 13th and 14th, 2 days of training. This is in Northern California. ADA compliance requirement training, that is a 1 day. And then we have a morning training on ADA complaints. How do we receive them, categorize them, investigate them, close them out? And then, oh, this is incorrect here. This last one I think is eligibility determination. So I need to update the website. I'm glad I'm reviewing this with you all. And then I have a eligibility determination webinar coming up on May 28th. So we spend some time going deep into the philosophies behind eligibility determination and of course answering your questions. And then I am starting up upon request another ADA Compliance 365 for transit managers and supervisors. This is 5 consecutive Thursdays beginning May 29th. And we go through each week is one of the 5 pillars of ADA compliance. And we get into the weeds on each of these. What are our policies? Here are the policy options. How do we manage this work? How do we supervise our employees? How do we create and manage our formal ADA compliance program? And the 5 pillars of ADA compliance are an excellent way of creating your ADA compliance program. So you can go on my website, adaguru.co, and you can have access to all this information. And so thank you all so much for your time and attention. As always, you know that I am a resource to all of you. I'm here to help. So email me questions, give me a call. You need some help with your policies, your rider's guide, whatever I can do to help support your work. And of course, I would love to see you in some of these trainings as well, especially you, Bree. Can you come to Hawaii, Bree? Maybe. Okay, don't say no, say maybe.
I wish.
Yeah, well, I'll put a nice little recommendation letter together for you. So, all right, everyone. Well, thank you all so much once again. Consider me a resource. You can count